Welcome to Trading the Close on this Thursday. I'm Toni Valliere with Verified Investing. And here's what's making headlines today. Meta, OpenAI, and Microsoft say they will buy AMD's new AI chip as an alternative to NVIDIA's. Amazon says it will no longer allow users to pay using Venmo starting January 10th. Shares of PayPal slid following that news. In an attempt to turn things around, GameStop's board of directors has approved a new policy allowing the company to invest in other stocks. And the number of Americans who applied for unemployment benefits last week came in at 220,000, showing that layoffs remain extremely low, even as businesses cut back on hiring. Now, tomorrow, the monthly U.S. jobs report will be released, and the anticipation of that news is being reflected in the market. So let's get a check of where things stand right now. Minutes before the close, we are seeing green all across the board. The Russell up 11, the NASDAQ up more than 190 points, the Dow up 66, and the S&P 500 up 35 right now. Let's bring in Chief Market Strategist Gareth Soloway. So what are some of the takeaways from all this green right now?
Yeah, so this was very interesting because yesterday you could arguably say was the first time we saw bad news actually causing a sell-off in the markets. And we saw yesterday, and again, a little hard to see here, but we opened up yesterday on that ADP jobs number that was weaker than expected. That's what we would assume, right? Up on weak data. But we then slid all day long and actually closed outside of this upsloping channel. So what that did was it got me saying, wow, maybe we are ready for a sell-off in the markets. Maybe this is the signal for the bears to take control again. Lo and behold, today we opened back up inside that channel and we've stayed there all day long, which tells me the bulls are back in control. We saw this about a week ago where the bears showed a little sign of maybe reversing and seeing selling, and the bulls just roared back. So, I mean, this is a market that, again, is light volume. That favors the upside. And it's a market where there's still this narrative that there's a soft landing or no landing at all, and interest rates are going to fall dramatically, and basically we're all going to sing Kumbaya. So the markets are just loving that. So I would just say this. Tomorrow is a very pivotal day. You mentioned the jobs report. That's going to be the big kicker tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay, we'll be looking for that. Let's talk about some of the big market movers. Google shares jumped after unveiling AI, their model Gemini. AMD, 𝗡cie, they say people aren't adopting dogs like they were during the pandemic. That's impacting them. Alphabet, Sprinkler, what have you been following?
Yeah, so let's talk about Google here. Google, big move up here. So if we take a look at this, up about 5.3% on the day. Interestingly enough, take a look at this trend line right here. If we zoom out, there's this wedge pattern that's been forming, and we're actually still below the wedge pattern level for a breakout. So we can see again how it's tagged pretty much all these pivot tops. So what this tells me as a technical trader is that great move on Google, but unless it breaks through that level, you want to be a little bit more on the conservative side. You may not want to jump long at this point because you're basically be buying up into resistance. Now, if we take a look at AMD, it's almost the opposite, right? And again, it's hard to chase, but look at AMD, same sort of channel or same sort of wedge pattern, but you've actually broken outside of it. So this would be a scenario where you're saying, okay, now if it pulls back a little bit, you buy the pullback in this scenario. At least that's how a technical trader would utilize it, right? So again, if we zoom in a little bit, very, very clearly, we kind of danced above it here, fell back. That's a very, I mean, there's no mistaking that as a breakout at this point.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't chase things like this. It's up way too much today. But if it did decide to, let's say, go sideways to lower back to that level, that now becomes a buying opportunity on a technical basis.
Okay. And what else are you following?
Oh my goodness. So you're right. OpenAI, we saw that falling. They announced earnings, right? So if we flip over to that, that's coming down a little bit based on earnings and obviously the competition from AMD's new chip. So again, that'll be interesting. I don't really have a technical level here. The only thing you would say if you zoom out on the charts, you would just take note of this low here. That, again, if we did come down to about $23 or so, that would be some technical support on the charts. But again, I still think that there's a lot of hope in these AI stocks, and I do caution people. I've seen these bubbles kind of brew from the .com to all the way through to current levels, and AI is going to change the world, but you have to still be careful. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. Right now, OpenAI looks like it's unbeatable, but now we see chips starting to combat that, right? And this is the same thing I talked about with NVIDIA, where NVIDIA rose up incredibly. Their numbers have been amazing, but now you're starting to see competition because the margins on those, on those margins on those chips are way too juicy for other companies in the semis to not go in and make their own chips. And so it's going to basically bring margins down, which makes it hard to invest in NVIDIA at these levels.
I'd like to get your take on Uber being added to the S&P 500. There's pros and cons to that, right? And it doesn't become the S&P 501. Somebody gets moved out.
Right, absolutely. So, there's every time a company goes in, a company has to be removed. Usually it's a company that's not doing so well or that's fallen dramatically, or maybe it's not in favor anymore. In this case, what we can see with this chart on Uber is that this was where the announcement occurred. You had this amazing gap up, and then it actually sold off. And you could see, look at the run. It's almost as if people knew about this ahead of time, right? Yeah. As it just continued to go up and up and up. And so my theory on this is when you see such a vertical move, it's obviously overbought. I think once that addition occurs, you actually do get a retrace on this because it's just way too overbought for just being added to the S&P 500. Again, there are funds that have to buy this, but they've probably already been doing that. So once it gets added and the news is over, it's just part of the S&P. And then again, people look and say, wow, that's such a dramatic move. My guess is what we'll actually end up seeing here is a pullback, maybe even dramatically if the markets come back, but it wouldn't shock me to see a pullback towards the $50 level in the not too distant future.
Okay, good to know. All right, it is Baby Friday, or Friday Eve as I like to call it. So let's take a look back at the week. How has trading been going for verified members?
Yeah, so trading's been overall okay. I would say the day trading was solid. We had 2 winners today in the live trading room, so that was awesome. The negatives are that the market right now is very much built on emotion. It's being driven by non-logical factors. So what that does is it makes being a swing trader a little bit tougher. And so, for instance, you look at a market where it's up into resistance, it's overbought. You say, okay, technically, if I look at 100 of these scenarios, 80 of them should pull back. We're not seeing the market do that right now because there's such a kind of an overconfidence that we're going to avoid any sort of catastrophe, no recession or anything like that. So we are having winners for members, but it's a lot slower right now as we're kind of navigating these waters, and we are down on some of our shorts because of it.
All right. Thank you, Gareth. We appreciate your take. And I know tomorrow, big day, so you can catch Gareth covering tomorrow's big news on the jobs report, and you can watch him navigate the charts in real time on his show. The Game Plan airs live every weekday morning at 9 right here on the Verified Investing YouTube channel. That does it for Trading the Close on this Thursday. I'm Toni Valliere, and we'll see you back here on Monday for Trading the Close.